Okay, John, let's start from the beginning.
All right.
Just as a background information, if you will, because it's not only true for myself, it's true for millions of people in Russia who are horrified by this war. We all have ties with Ukraine. Either it's blood ties because it's family members, or it's friends, or it's both. It's inseparable. We are the same people. Probably if someone from Ukraine heard that now, they would be denying that as vehemently as they could, but we are the same people, actually. We grew up on the same movies, on the same music, on the same literature. We like the same food. We have the same cultural references. We truly are as close as nations as it can only possibly be.
Okay.
The war with Ukraine is the most horrific thing that could possibly happen. I honestly do not have a vocabulary to describe that because it just shouldn't exist. So those words don't exist in my language or in English language or in any language, I believe, because it's just beyond horrors to imagine that we could go with war to Ukraine. From, as we say in Russian, every iron, every day, we hear how this war, how this horrors, how this aggression is unmotivated, how Russia went insane, how Ukraine is suffering, how it's absolutely undeserved, unprovoked, unreasonable, and how there is no forgiveness to anyone who is Russian, how we all, 150 million of us, supported, what horrible people we are, all of that. Well, you know.
Yeah, of course.
I think everybody knows that. I don't have exact numbers. I don't think anyone has, but according to different evaluations, and they vary from 200,000 to 2 million people fled Russia since the beginning of the war. And I refuse to call it special operation. It is war.
Okay.
You know, they fled Russia just like Ukrainians flee Ukraine, because they flee because they cannot stay here anymore. They suffocate here. They see Zs on cars, on billboards, even on socks, for God's sake, on everything. And it honestly makes you feel like you have no air. You cannot see this. Okay. You cannot see this. It's unbearable physically. When it started, I fled to the Far East to work in a rehab center because it would mean that I would stay within that rehab center and I wouldn't go out and I wouldn't be exposed to this Zs. And that was the only way to survive it, basically. Because I don't know, it's like you feel like you need to walk out of the window because you cannot live through that. This is what is done to the people of Russia by the media, by the news, by this continuous narrative that we are, I can say the bad guy, but it doesn't cover it. It's, I don't know, 1% of what we are.
Right.
In the eyes of the world. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So this was the beginning for me.
Well, the normal impression of the Russian guys and girls or whatever who are influenced by what I call the Western propaganda, because there were many emotions and not really many arguments. So she was just emotionally telling what she's feeling. And when I tried to explain things, it didn't really come through. This is a normal way, which I see very often in Russia, and also with Western people. That's normal because that's how the Western propaganda works. They are just pushing on the emotions, and when you are emotional, you are not able for a real fact-based argumentation. So at the end of the day, somehow I just told her, okay, well, I see. You will see it in Donbass yourself. This was, well, on some points, maybe I was able to make her think, but I wasn't really able to convince her. So the conversation ended somehow with the words that I said, really, okay, you go and we talk afterwards. But that's the problem, really, that the Western propaganda is emotional. So, and you know this yourself. When you're afraid, when you are hating somebody, when you love somebody, you're not ready for emotions. If we know this from many stories, just in private life, when somebody is betraying you, but you love the person, you are not able to listen to arguments. And that's how emotions work, and that's how the Western propaganda works. They show emotional pictures, tell emotional stories, and this switches off the analytic thinking. And that's what's happening, and she was an example for that. So I wasn't really able to convince her, absolutely not somehow. But I ended the conversation with, you're a good girl, and we talk when you come back.
Sometime in April, I believe it was, you sent me the subtitles to translate from several interviews that you took in Mariupol.
That's right.
And I was listening to what people were saying, trying to make sense of it, trying to convey what they were saying the best way possible. And it was very much like I was listening to the Russian side of the propaganda. It made me feel like, wait a second, that doesn't match. And they could not be the propaganda people because they are just simple people on the streets. They're not actors. It's obvious that they're not actors. And it was a very serious clash in my head. Later on, sometime in the beginning of July, I believe it was, a friend of mine asked me to help him to get his brother, who was from Volnovakha, that's a town between Mariupol and Donetsk, to get this person outside of Russia, because he managed to leave Ukraine, leave Donbass through the Crimea, to get him out to Germany. So we worked out the route for that person. And of course we met in Moscow, and I talked to that guy as well. And again, there was another first-hand evidence and another clash. So I had to have my answers, because what I was sure the truth was, as I refused to believe anything that Russia was saying, any Russian, it was all like, oh no, it's all Russian propaganda, it's all lies. I tended to believe what the West is saying. Those were my sources. And what I received from these interviews that you sent to translate and from this guy was saying was in absolute contrast to what I was receiving from all other sources. So when you said that you're going and you need a translator, I said, well, you of course can have a choice, but pick me. I'm a good translator.
That you are.
Well, so I was in a situation when I knew that I cannot go on anymore without having my questions answered. I had to know. And Thomas asked me, like, hey, they're bombing there in Donetsk. They have these mines, these butterflies laying around. It's dangerous. Aren't you afraid to go there? I'm like, Thomas, I don't care. I have to know, because not knowing is worse. Because not knowing is guaranteed doubts and frustrations and fears and shame. I mean, it's an incredible guilt that we all are feeling. It's a shame. It's like you are ashamed of who you are just because it is your passport, just because you are born in this country and this is your citizenship, and you're supposed to feel guilty and ashamed for that. It's unbearable. I had to go.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful to you that you made it happen.
Well, and on our way almost to the border, the hotel where we had rooms reserved, it got bombed.
It did.
And on one of your, I guess, pro-Ukrainian channel, would you call it that?
Let's say anti-Russian channels.
Okay, on one of your anti-Russian channels, somebody posted a video about how basically it was a fake and they were using actors to show...
Yeah, how they were using actors to show that there are dead bodies there, that they're actually not dead bodies, but they are actors and bad actors, as they are playing the dead bodies and moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so one of the first things that we kind of encountered, I guess, was I had to run... We were running around looking for a microphone cable. And we went into a shop, and there was a woman who was quite distraught.
Yeah, we went to that market because it's like electronic market where if you need to find anything, that's the only place in Donetsk where you can have hopes to find it.
Right.
And we asked around for that cable. And as it always goes, people get interested because we have a foreigner, so everybody gets involved into a conversation. And there was this girl who was really upset, and she was going through serious personal issues as well. And she saw me as some sort of a counselor, I guess, of something like that. So she shared, and we talked a lot. And she said, "I just lost." A friend. Apparently, she had a friend who walked by that hotel when it was bombed, and that person died, and the 3-year-old daughter of that person died as well.
Yeah.
Maybe on this video there was exactly the body of that person. The video was filmed from the inside of the hotel, so
like a surveillance camera.
Maybe I don't know. I'm not an expert. I wouldn't be able to tell. And I asked about it, and I was told by those who deal with it every day that it is normal for as they say, fresh corpse to sometimes move.
Sure, absolutely.
It happens, and apparently this is what was caught on the camera in this video.
Yeah.
But the cynicism of that, like, hey, see, that's an actor. When somebody lost life, it's insane.
Yeah. So let's talk about when we actually got into the Donbass, when we got to Donetsk and Lugansk. What was the first thing that actually struck you?
Okay, it took us a very long time to cross the border. So the hotel was bombed, and we didn't have a place to stay, and it was already relatively late in the evening. So John called his friend, another journalist, Graham Phillips, who lives in Lugansk currently. And he was a wonderful host. He said, come over to Lugansk and stay, instead of Donetsk, go to Lugansk and stay there. So our first couple of days were actually in Lugansk. He hosted us, which was really super kind of him. Graham, if you watch this, thank you so much. You're wonderful. Thank you. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that we arrived to Lugansk, and everything is covered with those Zs. Every vehicle, every bus stop, basically every surface. Everyone wears chevrons with Zs. All of it. Please understand. This is in my head, this is the new swastika. This is the sign that Russia is turning into a fascist Germany. And then we go to Donbass, that we are, according to the news, destroying. Yes? And everything there is covered with Zs. How can that possibly be? If people hate us so much, if we are such an enemy, if we are such a villain, that if we are such a monster that everything there is covered with the symbol, and the symbol gets complete support.
That would be like the Jews wearing voluntarily walking around with a Nazi symbol on their
Sort of.
with a swastika.
Sort of.
It makes no sense.
It did make no sense. I was like, what is that? Next day, we went to Severodonetsk. And it is the city which is in a similar condition as Mariupol in terms of devastation. It's horrible. Yet, they have no water, no electricity, no nothing. Yet there are people who stayed there, who live there in basements. We went to one yard, and there is a children's playground, and graves right on this playground, right there. It was the first biggest shock that I had when I looked at it live. When it's not a photo or, I don't know, some video that you watch on TV, but when you see it live. This playground and those graves right there. And there are people there, and they talk to them a little bit, and not a single one of them expressed any kind of negativity towards Russia. All the negativity was aimed at Ukraine. That was another clash in information, which was crucial to me. Like, how come you're not tearing me apart? I am Russian. It is my people who did that to you, and in my head. And the answer was, no. It's not this way. And then these conversations repeated in Mariupol, in Lugansk, in Donetsk, in Volnovakha. They repeated in all the places where we went to. So it was kind of extreme red pilling, if you will, for me to accept that. On the second day,